Shwmae and hello. Are you for some Tic Tac Toe? Let's get into it. So, this is how I've got it kind of looking, and this is how it's kind of prototyping. So, the electronics, I know it seems quite intimidating. I know. But trust me, 300 power, it's nothing. And also, I've been so kind as to write out some very lovely signs to try and help us break down how to build this ourselves. So, couple of caveats, some skins or things you will need, small signs, neon signs, medium or large signs, depending on how you like to advertise. I like the medium one here. Um, the OG Christmas lights. They are preferable for the dividers. However, you can use Deluxe Christmas lights, where we will power them off of our optional power right here as excess. So if you haven't got the original Christmas lights to divide, you can use the Deluxe ones as an alternative. For the actual X's and O's, I use industrial lights here. So you can use alternatives like this blinker light here and like the siren lights, but for preference, you could use the deluxe lights here, but I find them hard to see in the daytime, so that's why I stick with industrial lights. But I still use 5 of them, which deluxe lights require 5 power, so you can replace these lights right here for deluxe Christmas lights, and it would work all the same. So let's get into it. So I like to use 3 wind turbines because that's like not enough power, and up high so they get enough juice to fill up not just my batteries right here, but also I like to pinch off a bit of power, and this is what this optional power is here. I'm powering up these lights here, which will light up the pressure pads for the players. And I'm also powering up this sign, which would be the advertisement sign for the Tic Tac Toe sign you've seen up front right here. But I'm also using it to power up, if you have the deluxe lights, it'll power up to here right now. But then I'm going from here into the smart switch into these turrets down here, because on vanilla you need to be safe. But this is where there you go. So like this branch after these root combiners from the wind turbines goes into the splitter here. They go to the batteries go into these root combiners right here. That comes to this switch that turns the whole thing on, turns the whole thing off. Right, first and foremost, we've got a branch out of 43 power. I'm going to go through all the power outages first. So we're going to follow this arrow here. This next one here is a branch out of 55. And we go along here, do. The next one here is a branch out of 16. And the next one along here, do. Is a branch out of 9, and the next branch right next to it, a branch of 13. And then the branches go into the grid, as I call it, and each one has a different power value of 11 in the corners. North, south, east, west is 9, and in the middle is 14 power. We'll get into the reasons as to why that is, but that's each of the powers for all of the lights here and memory cells. But the final one comes out here into these branches be here, which branches out 19 and 19, and the final amount of power that comes out would be 15 power that comes to this timer. And that's our 300 power right there. All swallowed right up. Nommed. Now what's it being used on? So, the big reset. When you start a game, you always start with a reset. Power in the reset. So, the branch right here is branching out 43. And that's going to this timer here. And that is set for 2 seconds. It's being triggered, but we won't get into what's triggering it quite yet. We're just going to go into what is powering first. So it is powering this branch here, which branch out 40 power, which goes to these splitters. This one, which powers 1, 2, 3, and then they each power 3 splitters themselves. Where these splitters are resetting the memory cells on the outer sides here, but via these XOR switches. So like you'll see. So that's what these 18 are doing, because there's 18 lights, so there's 18 memory cells to reset. These, once again, still in the same power, still in the same 40. These are being sent to the player timer mem cells. Oh, how lovely, even more memory cells, a lot of memory cells. Don't worry about it, we'll just go through it. So the top memory cell here, of each of these 9, because once again it's of the grid, so top left to bottom right. So there's 9 that need reset in there, so that's the big reset. But this bit of power right here goes to the XOR switch just be here, that also resets the player sign memory cell. For each player's got a sign to indicate to them when it's their turn. So that's what that goes to, and that's the big reset. So what's triggering this is, one is the pressure pad, so players can reset it if it's a stalemate game. And what also triggers it is a player win. So it goes to this XOR, and this XOR, the reason I've done it so long is because of all of these, the length of it. Either way, it's going into the inverted output of these memory cells right here of the player win sequence. But we won't get into that, we'll keep on going down the line. So we've got all of our power here, and now we're going into the Memcell Power, the player timer and sign memory cells. So this is just the power for them. We're branching out 55 power, going into another branch, which that itself is, so that's 55 power, and then that's branching out, this here is branching out 44 power, going into this memory cell, which then goes into this splitter, into these 3 splitters, and this is just powering up these memory cells, this grid. So these control all of these timers, where for each position, as you see, the green controls the green player, red controls the red player. So it's going to the corresponding position of each of these. So the output, the inverted output, I've got green on the left and red on the right, which goes to all of those. But so once again, this is just powering up the underside. So not the top one, is powering up the bottom memory cell. But let's speak about this memory cell and how I'm using it. So I'm using this memory cell as a blocker. So you can see here on the right hand side, power's coming in from the bottom, and the inverted power, that's where the power's going. And if you imagine, the set function is the middle part of the blocker. When you connect the output of a mem cell to its reset, it starts and acts exactly like a blocker, but without using one power. Very handy, the more you know. So yes, so we're getting power going into, and so 44 power is coming into these, which is splitting off and sending out 5 power each to the memory cells on the bottom here. But the XX power that's being branched out of here, 5 power, is being sent to this memory cell, which is the player sign memory cell. So the top goes out to the OR switch that connects to the sign of each sign, and as we can see here, when X wins, it sets this function to make sure that the red player light is on, and when the O player wins, a signal is sent to this XOR switch, which goes to the reset function to make sure that this side is on. And the reason there's an XOR switch here is because we also got one coming from the big reset. Our little one out from the side there. So those are making it set, so that's how I'm making it always go to O first when we reset the game. And then the underside here, that's toggle, because that's from our next section. The player toggle. Like so, the amount of power. So this is branch 16 into a timer. That's timer for 1 second. And it is triggered by all of these XOR switches. But before we get to that, stay on this. So the power, so 16 power into this timer goes to this branch out of 13 to go into these, which then all these send in one signal to the top one, the top memory cell up here. So this toggles each of these back and forth between every single time. So that's how each time a player takes a turn. And this is how we're wiring them. Yes. So if what I was saying of how if O wins, it's powered on the left side. If X wins, it's on the right hand side of the XOR. But each of the XORs set the Memcell acting as a block function. So that's the reason we're using this Memcell also as a blocker. For when you win a game, it stops any further input, so it stops you from going past winning 3 winning positions, or winning a line and then it continuing onwards. So that's what stops it. It stops the game dead and then restarts it. So just to recover our ground, we got the player sign. Let's go into the ORs, and that's connected as such. But once again, our Memcell power is going into our bottom memory cell, and the inverted power is going into the next memory cell above it. The output goes to the reset, and the set goes to the XOR switch, as described before. And that's for each of the positions in the grid. So let's get to we've done the player toggle. These XOR switches, yes. Every single time one of the players presses one of these switches, one of these, and there's 18 of them, goes to these XOR switches to trigger the toggle. So out of the 5 power that's being received here, the memory cells, there's a bug saying of how much power is receiving them when it's, don't worry about that. So 5 power is being sent to each one of these because Memcells take up no power, and the bottom one is receiving 5 power from the splitter. So 5 power is being sent to these timers. The timer eats up 1, so does the splitter, and leaves 3 power. 1 power is being sent to these XOR switches to toggle the players. The other 2, well, the other 2 are setting the position select memory cells. We're kind of getting to those right next, but I want to start speaking of the grid. So the grid from top left being G1 to bottom right being G9, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, going across and then down. But yes, I also want to speak with the player signs. So this is the OR switch that it goes into, which goes into a Memcell. Once again, it's used as a blocker function, but this time the inverted output goes to the sign, and the pass through the sign goes to the set function. And that's how we get the sign to flash for when the player wins sequence is triggered. That's when it swaps through to more power being sent through, which then completes the circuit for it to be able to flash real quickly. A nice aesthetic right there. But the player timers, these player timers, so they go to, so like you see being powered, each one, this is G1. These timers are set for 2 seconds. And the player pressure pad is what triggers the timer. Going to the splitters, so once again the player toggle is one's being sent, but it's triggering the position select. So the position select, this is grid 1 and this is the position select. So that's each one of these branches is for each of the positions of the grid. So this is getting 11 power. This goes into this memory cell. Now this memory cell is not being toggled, but the inverted power goes to like the green and the red, where these mem cells, which connect directly to the lights, the output of these mem cells connect to the lights, and the inverted output connects to an XOR switch that connects to the reset function. So when this is being powered, this is on, but it's constantly looping until it is set. So what we're doing is we're setting both this memory cell so it's in the right mode to be either on the green side or the red side, and then we're also then sending power to the set function so that it then sets power to go through to the lights. And after the lights there is either a splitter, a branch which branches out 4 power into a splitter, or a splitter connected to 2 other splitters, which is only in the middle in G5. So one of each of these splitters or the branches is being sent out to block the player timer mem cell. So what we're doing is we're sending a power to one of these from both positions. So this is from the green and this is from the red for this grid position back on the player timer mem cells. So what this is doing is that's what turns off the timer or the position once it's been used. So if you've chosen a position, you can no longer use that position again, and neither can your opponent. So that's what blocks that function right there. So 1 power from out of these. Now the reason that there's different amounts of power and different amounts of like outages, so there's 2x's, 3x's and 4x's, as you can see here, that we need to be sending power to. That's because of the mathematics of the game. That's where we kind of go into the scoring system. There's only 8 winning positions in Tic Tac Toe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or like I've written out the actual coordinates of the positions on the left and right hand sides. So because there's only 8 positions, we can use AND switches where we daisy chain and AND switch together, so we get 3 positions. We then daisy chain a bunch of XOR switches together, so 8 of them, all XOR switched together. That gives us a final output of, if any one of those winning lines comes up, then bingo, we get a signal of 1, and we double that up because there's 1 scoring system for the greens, there's 1 scoring system for the reds. Once again, this is the daisy chain of the ANDs into the XORs and the XORs, where this then triggers the player win sequence timers. But before we quickly get to there, I don't want to skip over, like we've got the player counters right here, which is so a branch into a splitter, and splitter goes directly to the counters, so they're getting 4 power, and they're outputting into these splitters right here, where the splitters, one of them from each is going into an XOR switch right here, which triggers the toggle of this boombox, and that's why we've got the boombox branch 13 into a heater, into a boombox, because it's 3 power for the heater. Place that a little bit more where you need it to. And the boombox, so they're being powered. And the other one is going to this XOR switch, which triggers the end game, the win match, the 3 of 3, whatever you set your the counters to target to. So that's after the throughput of reaching the target. But so our end sequence of what our scoring system. So once again, so each of these from the winning positions, like that's what we're outputting power to, these AND switches. So that's for the scoring system. They all come through to the player win sequence. So this is just one of the player sequences, but you double this over. There's a timer for 10 seconds. That branches out 13 power. Goes into a splitter. One side will send 6 power to the other side of the OR switch. That's what makes it blink, blinkety, blinkety, blink, 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 blink. And the other side powers up this reverse timer system. So the branch powers up a timer that's set to 9 seconds. That goes through to this Memcell, which once again is acting like a blocker. So the output going into the reset, and then the timer out going into the set function, so it blocks it for 9 seconds, and the last second it'll send a burst of power through in the last second. And this is going to that XOR switch, which triggers the big reset, which that funny XOR switch I was telling you about, which then leads back to the big reset, back to this XOR switch. See, so what we're doing is we're allowing the light to blink for 9 seconds, and then it will then clear, it'll reset all of the positions and start back at player 0 or player 0. This is the exact same setup for X. Once again, it's branch of 19 and 19. And the final amount of power out of that last branch will give you 15 power into this timer, which once again is being triggered by the pass-through of these counters when they reach their target. I've set it at 3. But yes, the end game sequence. First, you're branching out. You get from your timer that's set to 10 seconds. You get a branch that branches up 5, which sends it to a Memcell, which is acting like a blocker, where we've got the similar setup to our other sign, which is the input power goes to the input, the throughput goes to the set, the output goes to the reset. So we get our blink, 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 winner, 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 chicken dinner. This branch sends out 2 to this timer, which is set for 9 seconds, our counter timer measure, which goes to the set function of this memory cell, where this is outputting 3 power, and the branch out goes to the memory cell goes to this splitter, the splitter then goes to 2 XOR switches, which are the same XOR switches right here that clear both of the the counters. And I almost didn't cover the other part of the sequence. So we've branched out 13 from our target sequencer here. So this is like the 13 power. We talked about the 13 power. We didn't talk about the remaining 4 power. So the split eats up 1. 1 gets sent to the add of the counter. 1 is being sent to the block function, of the Memcell Power. So the Memcell Power of how we were blocking power to this. That's what this XOR switch is here from either side of either O winning or X winning. And then finally, Memcell set to X or XOR to O, set the player's sign Memcell. So that's what the final one is for the Memcell, for the sign, if that makes sense. So the green, so the O will send power to the XOR, which will be powering up the reset of the player sign Memcell, because that's resetting. But the X, the red, will set, because we're once again trying to set this so that it'll set the right XOR, the right OR switch. This is the only OR switch. It'll select the right OR switch so that the light is working, and then it'll send the rest of that power through here to make sure that it'll get that ding 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 ding. Winner chicken dinner. One mistake I noticed as I was recording. This is 49 power, not 44 power. This is 49 power. Yes, this is for this branch right here. So it's 55 power that goes into this one that branches at 49 power. So that should make it work. But yes, there we have it, my friends. A Tic Tac Toe game that's just over 300 power. That is completely possible to build on vanilla. That swaps between each players. That knows all of the winning outcomes. Will stop people from going past a winning line. And when best of 3 has been won, ding 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 ding, you are a winner. But you're all winners in my eyes, especially if you try to build this yourself. And please let me know if you have tried to rebuild this, or if there's anything else I could be more helpful with. As always, my friends, when all else fails, try Wayuls. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much. Hwyl fawr for now. Goodbye for now.